I am president of Laugh Lab Storymasters, and we are a group that is dedicated to helping people learn to be better storytellers and better humorists. For this event that we have today, we actually used a book called the Non-Humorous Handbook. Kyle and I both read several different books, and this is the one that we determined would be the most help to all of us. So, with that in mind, I am now going to introduce any guests we may have. I guess I would like you to tell us where you're from and what Toastmaster group you belong to. So let's start with Marge.
Hi, my name is Marge Delafonte. I'm from Metro South Alabama Toastmasters Club in the Philippines. I'm also from the Hall of Learners Advanced Toastmasters Club in the Philippines as well. Was invited by International Director Alan because I'm really excited to learn about other best practices of clubs around the world. So happy to
All
meet you.
right. Well, welcome. We're glad to have you, Marge, all the
Thank
way
you.
from the Philippines. Okay, Leisuk, you want to tell everybody where you're from and what clubs you've gone to?
Hello, everyone. I am from South Korea. And by chance, I read Ty's promotion about this meeting. Then I already ordered the book you mentioned.
Come in.
It will take about 2 weeks for me to
Good morning,
get.
too. So
And
what's up?
Are you gonna
thank you for having
me
me
to the meeting?
for making this great event for all of us.
All right. Well, welcome, and I'm glad you're here. And Leisuk also belongs to another club that Kyle and I both belong to, which is the Squim Toastmasters Club. All right, then we have Reza. Reza, where are you from?
Madam Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, and most welcome guests. My name is Raisa Serebrennik. I'm from New York City. I belong to two clubs in District 40, one club in District 46 and one club in 119. And I came across your club yesterday or 2 days ago on the Facebook. So I have no clue what is going on here.
Well, welcome. I think it will be fun. I hope you enjoy yourself and that you learn something from this. So,
And
all right.
also on the
Oh,
agenda, I saw name of Mary, if I'm not mistaken. Somebody who did not attend today, Mary Morrison.
Morrison.
Mary
Yes.
Morrison. So Mary and I, we served as district governors back in 2012.
Wow. All right. So you have a history with one of our members. That's wonderful. I'm sorry she couldn't be here today. I understand she's at a wedding. Lori Haynes, welcome. And where are you from? And do you belong to any Toastmaster clubs?
Thank you, fellow Toastmasters and guests. I'm here in Michigan, which is part of District 62.
All right.
Part of two clubs here, Whirlpool Toastmasters and Twin City Toastmasters.
All right. Well, welcome. I'm glad you could be here. Carol, welcome. You want to tell us where you're from?
Yes, I am from Malaysia and Singapore in Region 13, and am also a member of Intercontinental Toastmasters and also now a new member in Swim
Swim.
Toastmasters.
That's right. You got it.
Swim, Swim Toastmasters.
Okay. So welcome to this meeting and glad you're
Thank
here.
you. Thank you.
Nikki. Oops. Looks like she's having trouble getting unmuted there. Oh. Nikki, can you share where you're from? Who's acting as
I'm Zoom Master.
can you ask her to unmute?
I have.
There she
Okay, I
goes.
got it.
Good.
I'm from San Diego,
Oh,
and I used to belong to Toastmasters. I haven't in quite a while. I just noticed the Laugh Masters. I want to write humorous stories, so I decided to tap into you guys today.
all right. Well, welcome. And I
Welcome.
hope this will help you. All right. Here to get things started with our panel moderator. And Kyle is a longtime Toastmaster. He says that Laugh Lab Storymasters spent the last year digging into and learning about humor and storytelling techniques, culminating in last month's showcase. Continuing our journey into laughter, we are dedicated this month to answering the age-old question, I'm not funny. How can I get started adding humor to talks? To ask this question, we have a panel of humor students led by our panel moderator, humorous presenter, Kyle Hall. Introducing us to humor for the non-humorous speaker, please help me welcome Kyle Hall.
Thank you, Emmy. When I joined Toastmasters 30 years ago, if you can believe that, when I joined Toastmasters 30 years ago, I could not make an audience laugh or inspire an audience to save my life. I spoke as part of my work job, but I was a technical instructor. I didn't know how to inspire. I didn't know how to make people laugh. And I watched other people do it, and I tried it, and it failed, and it mystified me. But I came and I joined Toastmasters, and I started learning how to present and how to be more me in front of the audience. And one day, I don't remember the speech or what I said, but one day I was giving a speech about something, and I said something, and the audience laughed. I was like, I made them laugh. And I tried it again the next week, and nothing. You know, for the first part of my Toastmasters career, making an audience laugh was hit or miss. It wasn't something I could do deliberately. And finally, I started to discover my own laughter, how I created laughter in my life. And then I would take that and include it in my talks. And I created a humor speech, which I call my secret decoder ring, which I was in District 2. I took it all the way to the district championship. And I started learning about laughter, but I was only using tools that I naturally use in my own life. Like my wife and I play with language when we're interacting with each other. You know, the motto of our marriage is "I love you." Anyway, so we play with language when we interact with each other, and I included that in my talks. I needed to expand my repertoire. I need to build the tools in my tool belt, so to speak, so that I can use humor more often, use it in places where, you know, I don't have any dialogue with my wife in this speech because it has nothing to do with her. So how can I include humor there? I need to expand that. And Emmy and I started looking at different books on humor techniques, and we discovered the Non-Humorous Handbook, and by Brian Wolf. And it's an easy read. It's an excellent read. He is a Toastmaster, and he's the stereotypical non-funny person. He's an accountant, and he joined Toastmasters, and he learned to be humorous by looking at mostly Toastmasters. In particular, in the book, he uses a lot of people who competed on the world championship stage. He also uses classic comics and comedians and humorists, but mostly he uses a lot of Toastmasters. It's an easy read. It's an excellent read, and we're using that as our inspiration for tonight's meeting. So we're gonna have our experts. There's 4 tools in the book, and we're gonna have one person talk about each tool, and then we're going to take a break. And then we're going to come back and we're going to go into breakout rooms and play with the tools. We're going to give you some opening paragraphs for some speeches, and you, as a group, you'll get a chance to go in and work on humorizing. Yes, I'm making up a word. We're going to humorize those opening paragraphs. So that's how our panel is going to work. Now we're going to kick off with Phil Pearson. Sorry, Phil. We're going to kick off with Phil Pearson. Phil began his Toastmasters journey in 2013. After giving several speeches, he discovered that fact-based presentations were right up his alley, but a little boring. Adding intentional humor wasn't up his alley. And in fact, it was usually worse than boring. Tonight, Phil will explore with us the humor technique of twists and how this technique can add humor to our speeches, even Phil's. Please help me welcome Phil Pearson.
My doctor says to me, Phil, we completed the electrical procedure on your heart, and it successfully got your heart back into the right pattern. Unfortunately, the atrial fibrillation, that irregular heartbeat, has returned. Turns out, Phil, you have a stubborn heart. Geez, Doc, my wife could have told you that. Mr. Panel Moderator, fellow Toastmasters, and fellow journeyers on this path towards humor. That was a speech from a speech I just gave at our speaker showcase last month. I hope it gave you at least a little chuckle or a smile or made you think of something that funny happened in your life. And that technique for humor, we use that technique we use is called a twist. Now, a twist can be anything in your history, in your background, but the basic idea is that you're going to tell a story in a way that the audience is following along with you, and then suddenly, at the most unexpected moment, you take a sharp turn to the side and it goes in a humorous but completely unexpected way. Twist is, why would a twist be successful? How could it be so useful in your presentations to add humor? Well, the good thing about twists is that they're eloquently simple. They don't take a lot of setup. They're quick, and they're easy for the audience to see the humor. Plus, a twist is kind of like having a normal conversation. And if it doesn't get the laughter that you anticipated, you just move on with your speech. Just keep it going like nothing ever happened, and there's no harm, no foul. Now, I gave you the basic the definition of a twist for your speeches. Now, there's variations, though. The one I just described is kind of a three-step twist, but a basic two-step twist is where you have a setup line. You feel like the audience feels like it's going to go one direction, and it takes that sharp turn right away. My favorite is from all time is from Henny Youngman back in the 60s, the comedian from back in the 60s. Henny Youngman would say, "I love women. Take my wife, please." There's a two-step twist where the audience is thinking that he's going to talk about how perhaps he loves his wife, but he says, "Take my wife, please," completely different direction. You might also have a one-step twist that was something like, my New Year's resolution was to lose 10 pounds. I only have 15 pounds to go. There again, it's set up the anticipation of the New Year's resolution to lose weight, and it goes in a different direction because not only did the speaker not lose 10 pounds, they gained another 5 pounds on top of that. Now you might do a variation. Variations on the twist are adding complexity to the story, to the setup. In a three-part twist, you have the idea of line one sets up the stage, line two further develops that stage, and line three becomes that twist, that change to the opposite side of the table, perhaps. You might think of something like, when I was 22, I got a job as a hydration specialist, a bartender, or by working 40 hours a day, you might get a promotion and start working 80 hours a day for your job. Now, of course, there's another, you could take it even another step and add a 4-part twist, which would be step 1, the setup, step 2, further development, and step 3, further even more development. And then 4 is the twist. And of course, a 5-step twist might be something like, well, you know, setup, development, and the twist. Those are the basic ideas behind the twist, and I've demonstrated how I have used it now once in a speech during our speaker showcase last month. You might also think about some of our world champions of public speaking, how they have infused the very simple twist into their speeches. A couple of that I have thought of in the past, for example, Ed Tate in the World Championship of Public Speaking 2000. Ed opens up with the policeman writing a ticket and giving it to him. Next time, Mr. Tate, drive a little slower. Ed, have you ever noticed how long it takes a police officer to write a ticket? Now, before I go any further, Madam Toastmaster, would you watch in the chat and let me know if we get some ideas? What would you say would be the expected response to, or the expected next statement in this twist? Have you ever noticed how long it takes a police officer to write a ticket? I see 15 minutes. Anyone else has a thought? What would be an expected follow? 2 minutes. Okay, got it. Yep. 5 minutes. Okay. Well, here's what Ed said, and perhaps you remember this. Or 20 minutes. Here, Kyle says 20 minutes. Here's what Ed's twist was. Have you ever noticed how long it takes a police officer to write a ticket? Completely eliminating all that time you just made up. Again, the twist being you're expecting minutes or more complaints about police officers and how they maybe do their job or something. Ed takes it a different way, talks about what we all know we have done perhaps, and maybe pushed the limit a little bit, and then ended up getting a ticket and eliminating all that time. Or Darren LaCroix's speech, I think in 2001. Darren is talking about his experience with the Subway sandwich shop and how he took out a loan to start that Subway sandwich shop. Darren says, I don't want to brag or anything, but I took a $60,000 loan and in 6 months, I doubled it. Then he follows with another twist. That's right, I took a Subway sandwich shop and turned it into a nonprofit organization. Great ideas on how to use a twist. Now, when you're doing twists, you might think of things in your own life that you can in fact relate to, because what relates to us as individuals relates to your audience. I gave an example from a couple of world's champions, a couple of ideas, opened with an idea that I had in using a twist. When you are looking at for a twist, the idea is to keep it short, keep it to the point, and a very different response than what the audience is expecting. Now, just a couple of other ideas that I'm going to pull out of the book that we just discussed. As an example, for example, so imagine a speaker giving a speech on hospitality. Hospitality is the art of making guests feel like they're at home, and you wish they were at their home. Another twist that is very quick. I've been in love with a woman for 20 years. If my wife finds out, I'm in real trouble. Or describing their marriage. So you can see that when the twist is used at the right time and in the right place, you can take and interject a quick chuckle, or maybe it'll turn into an uproarious laughter, like what we saw in those world championships of public speaking. And it's an opportunity for you to get it in there and get it done very quickly, get the response. And if it doesn't land well, then you can just keep moving with your presentation. Mr. Moderator, I give the podium back to you.
Kyle, you are muted.
Thank you, Phil. Yep. Let's have a round of applause for Phil. Phil, thank you for sharing information on twists. And one of the things I noticed that he was talking about doing a three item twist. You know, the first sentence or first part of the sentence describes, sets the pattern. The second part reinforces it. The third part takes it in a new direction. Well, that's the rule of three, if you've ever used that in humor. So that a twist is a rule of three is a subgroup of a twist. So I just mentioned that. Our second speaker tonight is Emmy Bartholomew, the president of our club. Emmy will give us some tips and tricks about adding asides to her speeches. Asides are something that she has done many times. And here, with some examples and some surprises, is Emmy Bartholomew teaching us about asides made easy.
Thank you, Kyle, for that great introduction. I was wondering if you have ever waited for something to happen and it just feels like it's getting farther away than getting closer. It's like today I was waiting to go to my chiropractor and it just, the time would never come. Finally, oh, it's time to go. And I get to the chiropractor and I'm thinking, why am I so anxious to get here? I was just here yesterday and it was the most painful thing in my life. It was worse than the labor of childbirth. At least with childbirth, you get something good out of it to take home, a baby. This was pain for the sake of pain. that is a little sample of an aside. An aside in this case was the getting a baby as a result of all that pain. I wanted to be able to give you an example right off the bat of an aside. But asides are really great. I use them all the time because they come naturally to me. An aside is a brief, humorous, conversational comment, usually in the form of an insider's explanation. This comes from the book, by the way, an elaboration or an observation. Typically, it's delivered after a pause in a different tone of voice or octave and accompanied by appropriate facial expressions. Imagine that you have a speech that you want to give or a talk, and it just is boring, and you'd like to add a little something to it. One of the comments that was made at our Toastmaster meeting earlier this week, where we had an evaluator, Craig Valentine, sorry, evaluating our top 3 speakers, was he said that you don't add humor to a speech, you find it in your speech. You encourage it. You look for opportunities within your speech to add humor. But it's not that you're setting out to make it be what it isn't. And the reason I'm saying this is because so many times what I've done when I wanted to create more humor in my speech was to look at the actual speech itself and see what I was thinking about when I wrote the speech. So I'm going to take you to a speech that I did just recently, or a talk I made up just recently. It was what got me to the chiropractor in the first place. I was at the senior center. I was going to learn to play pickleball for the first time. And I was running after a ball. I tripped. I fell and hit my knee and my elbow and my head and was lying in a pool of blood. That's the basic story. But it's not very fun to listen to. It's kind of, well, that's kind of scary, I'm 71 years old. I don't want to be following. So I was trying to think, well, how would I make that more fun to listen to? So I decided to tell the story with a little bit more oomph, more of what was going on in my head while I was doing it. So I'm at the senior center and I'm going to learn to play pickleball. I've been an racket person all my life. I played tennis when I was young, and then I played racquetball, and now I'm going to learn to play pickleball. What I didn't know was that the paddle would be so short. It's almost like a ping pong paddle. And I kept missing everything because the thing was so darn short. So I was running after a ball and I tripped. I smashed my knee, I bruised my elbow, and I tried to take the wall out with my head. It didn't work. That is an example of an aside. What an aside does is invite the audience into what you are feeling. So I'm all excited, I'm doing this, and there's a complete change in my attitude, in my voice, in the dynamics of what I'm saying. Tried to take the wall out with my head. It didn't work. That is an aside where everything changes, and it also invites the audience into what's going on in my head. When I was trying to figure out whether this would be funny at all, I did something that we all need to get in the habit of doing, which is to take it to others, to use it over and over and over for other people and find out if anybody laughs. So I did it at church. People kind of giggled. And then when I said it didn't work, some laughed and others just chuckled some more, but it seemed to go over really well. I did it at the local coffee shop. I gave it to my neighbor and my friends, and it pretty much got chuckles whenever I did it. In fact, one time I did it, and I said, I tried to take the wall out with my head, and this woman says, "It didn't work, did it?" She stole my line. That is an example of one aside. Now, there are lots of different qualities that you can add to an aside. So what I'd like to do is talk about some of those qualities, and Kyle put a link in the chat to the list of qualities if you want to print it out and take notes or whatever. So one is exaggeration. Now, I was doing a speech for a contest back when I first started Toastmasters, and I was trying it out at the area level, I think. No, it was earlier than that because I got an eval. And it was about having cancer and the surgery. And so here's what my line was. And I said, "They took half my colon." Afterwards, the evaluator said, "You know, I think this would be a great place to add humor, because a contest speech needs to have some humor. It's hard to put a heavy topic like that. It's hard to put humor in it." She said, "I think this would be a good place for exaggeration. You know, the kind of thing like the fish was this big." Okay, so here's what I did. They took 10 feet of my colon. All right, all right, all right. It was only 10 inches, but it felt like 10 feet. So that's an example of a double aside. So we have the exaggeration in the original part, and then the first aside, which was, all right, it was only 10 inches. And the second aside, where I said, but it felt like 10 feet. So each one of those had a different quality to it as far as the sound, the emotion, the dynamics. Everything was different about them. So that's one of the things that you really have to work on, is to make sure that there is enough difference that it pulls people in. And anytime you do this or you do this, anything where you're getting closer to your audience and you feel like you're sharing something personal, it draws them in. So that was one of my asides. One of the things that you can do is add innocence. Now, I haven't actually used this one, but I think it's a great one. It's one where you go, "Oh, not me," or something to that effect, or, you know, where you roll your eyes and so it takes a facial expression, and maybe you're denying something that everybody's going, "Oh yeah, it was you, all right." Then the flat affect. When I said I tried to take the wall out with my head, and then I said, it didn't work. My voice level came down. There was no expression on my face except, you know, bleh. And so that is a complete change from the excitement to the it didn't work. All right. Then there is, let's do the unexpected. Now, this is one version of the rule of three. So I used this one in a speech that I call my Bob speech. It's a speech where I'm surrounded by Bobs. They're everywhere. So this one uses the rule of three, but it also is an aside. So here's how it went. My stepdad is named Bob. My husband is named Bob. My father-in-law is Leo, but they call him Bob. So that's one where it is the rule of three. So it changes, it's a twist. We change it from Bob to Leo, but he really is actually a Bob. So that's another way of doing an aside. Another aside is a double aside, which I just did one. What was it? The exaggeration was a double aside. Okay. So anytime you take one aside and then you do another one afterward, and you could probably do triples, I don't know, but I have never done that. That would be new for me. Okay. Then there's the playful aside. This one also comes from my Bob speech. And it also uses a physical effect. So you can put physical effects into your asides. And I love doing that because it really makes it more playful. So here's a playful aside with a physical effect. So this family down the street has 5 Bobs. Robert, Rob, Robbie, Bob, and Bobby. They just keep bobbing up all over the place. So there's an aside using a physical action with it. Then another physical one that I have used that I absolutely loved was in a contest speech where I was talking about the masks that we all wear that come between us and our community, our friends, our audiences, and that it's time to remove those masks. So in the speech, I'm at the point where I'm telling them to remove the mask. So here goes. Take off your mask. Nobody said it would be easy. So there's the humor that comes with trying to shake off the mask and it won't come off. And then the aside, nobody said it would be easy. So you can combine all these things together and really add a lot of humor. Then my contest speech last year, I did an aside with a prop. So in my speech, the message was that people needed to share what was really going on with them or what they needed clearly, concisely, completely. And in the speech, I had a homeless person holding up a sign where he did that. So the sign was a prop that told us what he needed clearly, concisely, completely. At the end of the speech, I used that clearly, concisely, completely at the end. And then I held up a sign that said, applause. I got a lot of laughs with that because it was telling people what I wanted, clearly, concisely, completely. And they laughed and they applauded. I think it's a shock because we don't ask people to applaud. But it was obviously what I needed. So it worked really, really well. So what I would like you to do when we get to the part where we practice some of these things is to think about what's going on in your head when you read this speech or whatever, and see if you can make an aside out of that. Okay? It's up to you. Thank you, and it's now back to Kyle.
Thank you, M.E. Thank you very much. And I have watched you use those asides in many of your speeches, and I did not recognize that that was the name of the tool, but I knew what you were doing. And I'm going to talk about one of my own asides a little later on. Let's move on to our panelist number 3. Now, I want to thank our panelist number 3, especially. I'm grateful to all our panelists, but to panelist number 3 stepped up at the last minute because one of our other members had scheduled herself to give this presentation, and then work happened and she was gone. And Cheryl Marks answered the call and stepped up, and I very much appreciate it. Cheryl has been a Toastmaster since 2011. She's belonged to a lot of clubs, but she's currently a member of 4 clubs: Commerce Communicators, Capital Club, Sound Advice, and Laugh Lab Storymasters. She joined Laugh Lab to get better at adding humor to her speeches. Tonight, she has volunteered to talk to us about put downs. Putting us down, please help me welcome Cheryl Marks.
Thank you very much, Kyle. And I was happy to help you out. I wish I could have prepared a lot more, but I think I at least did what you need tonight to know about put downs. In my introduction from Kyle, I mentioned my clubs, one being Laugh Lab, this club. I joined Laugh Lab to help me become more comfortable with humor. I need to back up a little bit though, so that you kind of know my background. In 2011, my very first speech, which we all know is an icebreaker, my very first speech, I had humor in it, but I didn't add it in. It was accidental. To this day, I don't remember what I did or how I did it, and very seldom has it happened since. So now we come to 2024. And that's where Laugh Lab comes in to help me to be more comfortable with humor and work on putting that into my speeches and make them better. And I enjoy Laugh Lab. I put a little plug in for us. If you're looking at needing to learn humor and get humor into your speaking, I suggest that you check us out a little bit more and join our club, because we are a very good club to help with your humor. Tonight, I'm going to talk about put downs. I know put downs, but I didn't know that that's what these were, and I really haven't used them. What put downs are self-deprecating, relatable, and surprising. Self-deprecating, where you humorously or lightheartedly belittle or make fun of yourself. Relatable, because you're showing that you are a regular person like everybody else out there. And surprising, unexpected humor to your speech that will make people smile and laugh. Put downs in your speech will warm up your audience, creating a stronger connection and triggering greater reception to your message. Your message will come across a lot more and will relate to them a lot more. A great example of using put downs in your speech is from one of my favorite world champion speeches that I often go back and listen to many times. Didn't know that the way he does his speech was put downs. Now I know. And that speech is by Darren LaCroix, called Ouch. And if you haven't watched it, it will show amazing put downs. Pretty much the whole speech is that, including 2 times when he falls flat on his face. And I didn't realize what that put downs were, what that he was talking about, but he's got them all through his speech. And of course he won. And I really enjoyed that speech. And so when I volunteered, Kyle asked me to do this and I volunteered, I went, oh, I read about what I'm going to be talking about, and I went, oh, I know this. I know Darren LaCroix. I mean, if you happen to get the book, the chapter on put downs has the whole written speech for Darren LaCroix in it. he got permission to do that because it was so, it just showed everything about put downs and made it very clear. If you didn't understand put downs after you read that, you're going to have to do some more thinking. Put downs are the opposite of roasts. Okay, put downs target yourself. Roast targets others. Put downs builds rapport with your audience. Roast can be risky. Put downs have low risk of offense, but put downs have low risk of offense, but roast are potential to offend. Crafting and implementing put downs in your speech it's just a matter of just figuring out what you have in your life, what you are, and come up with those put downs. So you identify any quirks that you have in your personal traits to poke fun at yourself. And everybody has little quirks or things they do that they can poke fun at. And some of my examples coming up here are some of my examples of my quirks. In your speech, take the put down and make it natural flow of your speech. Don't make it stand out. Make it a natural flow in your speech. Be authentic and have fun. If you have fun with poking yourself, the audience will bond with you. They'll see that. They'll notice, oh, I relate to that person. I understand what that person's saying because you just put down yourself. Practice your delivery and timing for the best effect. It's just a matter of we practice our speeches anyway, but remember to practice your delivery and the timing of where you put that put down in, and that way, you don't have to do it like Darren LaCroix did. He had a whole bunch of put downs, and so you don't have to do the whole speech that way. Darren obviously won doing that, and I thought it was an excellent speech, so I'm going to work on putting put downs in my speeches because it worked for Darren. Why wouldn't it work for me? So here are some of my examples that I have on put downs. I don't have a lot here, and I obviously didn't speak as long as the rest of the panelists did because I didn't have as much time to prepare because at last minute I was asked to do this. Here are my examples I've come up with. I'm a very mature thinker. All my ideas are at least 50 years old. I'm so old, my daughter asked if my blood type has been discontinued. I set low personal standards, which I consistently fail to achieve. I'm so uncoordinated, I couldn't even follow a dog on a leash. I haven't lost my mind. Half of it wandered off, and the other half went to look for it. I'm not fat. I'm just easier to see. I'm just one French fry short of a Happy Meal. And one of my favorites, which I'm going to use in one of my speeches I've been working on, my cooking's so bad, my family says grace after we eat. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Cheryl. Thank you very much. Now, before I introduce our fourth and final panelist, I did put a link in the chat to the handout for tonight. And of course, you should all have received an email with this link. So you may have already printed it, but it's a little one-page handout that talks about the 4 tools. I also sent you a four-page handout, which has the opening paragraphs for 4 different talks. And you may want those, you will want those when we do our breakout session after our break. You may want them printed if you want to write on them. So I mentioned that in case you want to prepare. So let's move on to our fourth and last panelist. Cynthia Sanderson has been a member of Toastmasters for over 10 years, and she's a member of 3 clubs and is leading at the district level this year. Thank you, Cynthia. Cynthia can usually start out strong with humor in a one or two line sentence, but sustaining humor throughout her whole speech is what she has difficulty with. She joined Laugh Lab Storymasters in part to learn how to do that. Tonight, she will focus on exaggeration. She has learned so much about this technique that she could write a book on it, like an encyclopedia-sized book. Her goal is that you leave with some tips and techniques in how to use exaggeration in your future speeches. Please help me welcome Cynthia Sanderson.
Thank you, Kyle. Most of you have heard me grumble out loud about following Kyle Hall when speaking. Something about never following him on purpose. Well, recently I have added another rule. Stop listening to Kyle Hall. It makes you volunteer for things that you didn't know you wanted to do, but just might be good for you. Recently, he gave a speech at our Toastmasters officer training, and it was about applying Toastmasters skills to everyday life. He talked about getting out of your comfort zone. When he asked for speakers for this meeting, I thought, no way, I don't want to do that. It sounds scary, researching and writing a speech about humor in front of a bunch of professional humorists? Oh, not me. And it's a long talk, 12 minutes. I can do a 5 to 7, but 12? I don't know how to do that. In Kyle's talk, what he said about the comfort zone is that when his first thought was no, he knew it was time to challenge himself and ask himself why not, and take a breath and do it anyway. Apparently, my caffeine-soaked brain filed that tidbit of wisdom away for future reference, and a week after Kyle sent that email, the nudge to do it anyway started kicking my subconscious brain like a bull with a cowboy on its back. Like any good procrastinator, I ignored it. But it got louder and louder, and my impulsive side fired up, and I emailed Kyle secretly hoping that I was too late to be a panelist. But no such luck. I was the last panelist, and I got the topic of exaggeration. What I know about that could fit in a thimble. The Oxford Dictionary definition of exaggeration is a statement that represents something as better or worse than it truly is. According to Brian Wolf, the author of the book, The Non-Humorous Handbook, How to Easily Add Humor to Your Speeches, exaggeration adds color, laughter, richness to your presentation, especially if accompanied by gestures and facial expressions. In most speeches, exaggeration is one-liners or a group of exaggerations put together to form vignettes. If you haven't read the book, I highly recommend it. Most of it is examples of the different types of humor with tons of examples following each section. I have found the title to be a bit of a lie. I have found it to be difficult to add and not easy to add humor to my speeches, especially this technique of exaggeration. After agreeing to do the talk, I began to see numerous examples of exaggeration. Exaggeration is everywhere: movies, books, plays, television, to name a few. My favorite, Facebook ads. Just think of it. Advertising executives make a living based on exaggerating the benefits of the products they are shilling. My husband and I went to see a play of the adaptation of Pride and Prejudice. Not only was the dialogue witty and filled with exaggerations, but the physical performance of the actors covered the stage itself with overly animated gestures. Most of them generated laughter from the audience. Exaggeration is a humor tool that has to be used very carefully. Exaggeration is related to outright lying. There's a fine line between a big fat fib and an exaggeration. It also can make a put down, can also mask a put down. One example in the book was, he's so big when he got on the scales, it read, to be continued. I don't know about you, but I am not about to make a comment regarding people's weight. What if someone had a medical condition that caused it? And it's just rude and strikes me as unkind. Personally, in my speaking, I do not use a lot of written exaggerations. My attempts at adding them to me sound more like metaphors. But I'm better at the physical side of exaggeration by varying my tone and speeding up or slowing down to overemphasize my point. I can also do facial and gestures. I looked through my collection of speeches that I had written to see if I could find examples of exaggeration. I did not. Apparently, it's not a technique that I am comfortable with, at least on the written word. I am going to challenge myself to add more examples of written exaggeration to my speech in the future. One of the most famous quotes on exaggeration probably came from the American humorist Mark Twain, who said upon reading his obituary in a newspaper something to the effect of, "Tales of my death have been greatly exaggerated." This is all I have on the topic of exaggeration. Take it or leave it, but I would recommend that you do two things. One, consider adding exaggeration to your humor tool bag. And two, strongly consider not listening to Kyle Hall when you want to get out of your comfort zone and do something good for your soul. Toastmaster Hall.
Thank you, Cynthia. And some of you may have noticed that after years and years of study and hard work, I have finally earned the role of Cat Couch. This is Kismet, the Zoom bombing cat. She knows when I'm in a Zoom meeting and that I'm going to be stationary for a little while, and she decides it's time to come in and get some attention. We are going to take a break, but before we do that, I want to share with you some of one of the lessons I learned reading the non-humorous handbook. As one of our panelists mentioned, last month the Laugh Lab Storymasters did a humor and storytelling showcase, and I had a speech that I'd been working on called Clueless. And I needed to uncover, not insert, I needed to unveil or discover more humor within the talk. In particular, I wanted the opening to have a laugh because, you know, I was getting 30, 40 seconds into the speech before there's any laugh. So I was looking, I'm going to share my screen. I was looking for a way to do that. So here is my example is I looked at my talk. The talk is called Clueless. It's about everything I know about relating to women. And my opening sentence is, I discovered my cluelessness with females early on in life. Yeah, when I said that, I'd get a smile, maybe. No laugh, nothing out loud. And I read through the non-humorous handbook and I thought about twists. I said, I think I can get something in here in the first sentence. And after a little while, this is what I came up with. There are men who say they understand women, and there are men who tell the truth. I am the latter. I discovered my cluelessness with females early on in life. Got a laugh in the first sentence. So it worked. Later in the same speech, I'm essentially doing an aside. And the aside is, I was a young man, clueless about dealing with women and suffering from the same hormones polluting my bloodstream, making coherent thought a rare and sought after luxury. That's the way I wrote it the first time. Again, maybe I get a smile, maybe a chuckle, not a laugh. It captured what I was thinking, but I thought I could express it a little better in a more humorous way. And after a little work, I ran it by my wife, and she actually helped me to wordsmith it a little better. And this is what we came up with. I too was a young male, clueless about women and suffering with the same adolescent hormones polluting my bloodstream, making intelligent thought as common as unicorns. So that's an example of exaggeration. And the whole paragraph is actually an example of an aside. And I'm going to stop sharing. I wanted to share that with you before we went on break, because when we come back, we're going to take some opening paragraphs of some speeches. We're going to go into breakout rooms and we're going to brainstorm on them. So it is 7:32. We're going to take a 5-minute break. We will start up again at 7:37. And I look forward. And I'm just going to make it 2 rooms. Here's what you need. Here are your instructions. Take the tools handout with you and take the speech openings. And I'm pasting a link to the speech openings in the chat again. When you get there, when you get into the breakout room, quickly decide who's going to be your spokesperson and quickly decide which speech opening you want to work on. There's 4 of them, 1 per page. Just choose one. And you have 15 minutes to use the 4 tools and to brainstorm together how to humorize that speech opening. And somebody should be capturing, the spokesperson should be capturing notes. If in the unlikely event you finish with one in 15 minutes, you can start on another if you want to. But you probably won't. You probably won't finish with one. At 15 minutes, we'll come back and I will ask the spokesperson to stand up and deliver the opening that you've come up with, including, the humorous changes you've made. And then I will be asking you what your experience was trying to humorize these speeches, trying to use the tools. So let's go into breakout rooms. We're going to have 2 rooms. I'm going to assign you automatically, so I don't know who's going to be in the room. And I will I'll broadcast into the room a 5-minute warning, a 2-minute warning, and when the rooms are being closed.
I was with Karen and Leisuk and Cynthia, and we chose the one, Are We the Same? We didn't think to change the title, but anyway. So, have you ever drafted an email, text, or phone message and confidently hit send and immediately thought, oh no, I shouldn't have sent that. How could I have sent that? Is what I was supposed to say. not only did I send a horrific message, but I sent it to the very last person I should have, my boss.
Hmm.
And that's all I have, so I have to go. Sorry,
Oh.
everyone.
Feel better.
Better, Emmy.
Feel better, Emmy.
Thank you.
Thanks. It was a lot of fun, you guys.
Does anybody else who was in the room with Emmy want to add to that?
That's all we had time for, Kyle.
Okay. I'm not surprised. 15 minutes and a few paragraphs and a group of people working together, that, I thought that was about right for dipping our toe in this pond. How
Well,
about
we found it was fun.
Okay.
We started out just trying to figure out which one we wanted to do, and then we talked a little bit about it. And then once we started brainstorming and playing with it, it got fun, and we came up with different ideas and exaggeration and using the aside, using the exaggeration, using the different tools. And it was kind of fun, and we decided at the end it became much richer because of working as a group.
Sure.
Much like feedback after a speech can make it much richer.
Sure.
Or funnier.
Admittedly, I haven't spent any time. I was in the group, but I also imagine that with a little bit of work, you could figure out a way to use a put down in there, because you've just sent a message that you shouldn't have sent.
Yeah.
It's got to be an opportunity there for a self-deprecating comment.
Yeah.
We talked a little bit about that. We just ran out of time.
Sure. Okay. So I want to talk more about that in a minute, but let's have the second group read their opening. Who's representing the second group? The other group. Carol, go ahead.
I'm not snobby. I'm cultured. Out dining with my uncle, who was enjoying his Bud Light. I went on a mission for a bold IPA with citrusy hops and an IBU of 7 points and above. I landed on Elysian space dust. Prove that even when you are orbiting craft beers, Uncle still happily grounded on Bud Light. When our beers came, I offered Uncle a taste of my space dust. He politely declined and asked, "Do you think that tastes like dishwashing liquid?" Oh, I replied, "Well, yes, but I'm a bit of a beer snob." Uncle Kirk shot back, "No, you are not a snob. Leave the poor beer out of it." Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. Okay, so what was the second group? What was your experience working on this opening?
At first, we were a bit jittery between myself and Joel. And Cheryl, we are trying to find out which one we are trying to work out.
Sure.
I think we took too much time figuring out which one we wanted to work on. And then we went, oh, now what do we do?
Okay.
So
Okay.
we didn't make as many changes as we probably would want to have.
Okay.
But it was a good time to understand, what we need to do to use these tools to work on that.
Well, 3 different members had submitted opening paragraphs, and so I tried to choose 4 of them that were different from each other. Each had a flavor, so each group could choose one that had a flavor, but maybe offering you too much choice was the wrong choice for a 15-minute workshop. What was your overall experience in trying to use the various tools, the twists, the asides, the exaggeration, and my brain is not telling me the other one. The self-deprecating, the put downs.
Downs.
So what was your experience trying to use those?
Well, I was just giving a chance for Carol to answer, but maybe I'll just take a minute here. Definitely, when a subject is presented, we try to use two of it. I think, and we went for exaggeration, and we tried twist, but definitely there were chances for like put downs and asides too. But the biggest thing is we want to make it like start with exaggeration. So we started with how can we exaggerate the first sentence that is showing the difference between me and my uncle at a restaurant. There's always some the age gap to play in, and one knows better, one doesn't know better, things like that. All those dynamics come into play. So we we wanted to display that, and our in the twist, I think we wanted to also show that sometimes our choices are not really appreciated by the older folks. So that's something we wanted to put in that mix as well. So yeah. Yeah.
I tried to come up with a put down for an older beer drinker, kind of, but I couldn't come up with anything.
Well, one of the things that struck me when you were doing this, the older uncle asks, "Do you think this tastes like dishwater?" I think that's the perfect opportunity for an aside. No, I don't think. No, I think dishwater would be an improvement on that.
Yeah, I thought about that. No, I think that tastes better than this.
Yeah. The my favorite, and this is one from real life, is I ask what beers they have, and somebody says, Coors and Bud Light and Bud, and no, I asked for beer. But I'm a bit of a beer snob. So, anyone else want to tell us what your experience was in using these tools?
I found a very interesting things in myself using humors. Amy mentioned that we should pay attention to what is going on in your head. So between sentences, I could see what I thought, and by using what I thought, I thought I could twist it what my thought, then it can be a humor. It was a very new and, I would say, precious experience to me. Thanks.
Excellent. That's excellent. And noticing your own reactions to the text and the thoughts and the thought process, learning to observe yourself while you're doing that does give you the opportunity to uncover some of that humor, because some of that humor is just what's going on in our head. I don't think everyone was back. We were having a little chat before we ended break, and I do a speech called, I've changed the title several times. I'm just call it Dobang. It's a speech in my head, debating about whether I'm going to get in the hot tub or not. And when I first did the speech, I just described the two sides of my head, the two arguments, the two sides of arguing. And over time, after I've given the speech, it then became two different voices. And then it became two different characters. And one character is this laid back hippie dude, and the other is this really uptight New England Puritan type. And I give them both text, both stance, posture, voice, and they argue over whether or not they're going to get in the hot tub. And all of that's just in my head. And so 90% of the humor from that speech is just what's going on in my head. And it really works sometimes. Other experiences in using the tools.
going to take a lot of practice to do that.
I thought it was,
Try to take one and try to come up with something. It's not something we're used to doing. It's brand new, but at least we know these tools and we can start working with them and practicing them and trying to come up with something.
Sure.
I thought the workshop was easier than writing the speech.
The workshop was easier than the panel session.
Yeah,
Okay.
because it was collaborative and you could, I don't know, do it by example so it kind of set in your head better.
Okay. Should I have made it a little longer than 15 minutes?
Probably, maybe a
Probably.
little bit longer. Yeah,
Okay.
because it's all brand new to us, and taking somebody else's words and coming up with changes when we're so new to the tools. So I think if you do this again in the future, I would do that. Maybe shorten the panelists' time a little bit, maybe, and then add on to the workshop itself.
I hadn't planned on doing this, but can I share a lesson that that I learned trying to apply these techniques to my Kalula speech?
Yeah.
So I'm going to bring up my slides again, and just so I can share this with you. Okay, there it goes. And we'll probably end our panel and our panel session with after this. So this was my first line, and here's the second line I finished with. What I didn't tell you was there's an intermediate phase, because the first time I read this, I was thinking I would say, there's two types of men in the world: those who say they understand women and those who tell the truth. Just like, any of those, there's two types of people, there's three types of people in the world. And I thought about it, and I went back and forth, and I asked my wife about it and whatnot. And what we both agreed with is I shouldn't use there are two types of men in the world, because that telegraphs this is a joke. I didn't want to telegraph to people that this is a joke, because then they'll be expecting it. And the point of a joke is surprise. So I deliberately took that part out, and I just left our men who understand women and men who tell the truth. I'm sorry, men who say they understand women and men who tell the truth. Now over here, this is my first paragraph. This is my second paragraph. Again, there was an intermediate stage, and I didn't capture the exact text because I was editing it, but the intermediate stage was something along the lines of, I was a young male, clueless about women, and suffering with the same adolescent hormones polluting my bloodstream, making unicorns more common than intelligent thought.
Oh, yeah, this is better.
This is better, because the funny part is unicorns, and humorous comics will tell you, always put the most important word at the very end of the sentence after a pause. And so, but I mean, the first version was unicorns are more common, and it's like, no, that's not quite right. And I went, I need to put unicorns at the end, and I rewrote the sentence to work this way. Now, I will tell you that I am a person who resists writing speeches out verbatim until I've given it 5 or 6 times at different clubs, and it's kind of and the speech has taken shape. But using these tools is easier if I have something written out verbatim, and I can actually play with it. So I'm slowly moving more towards David Brooks. David Brooks was, I think, the 1999 world champion, and he says that great speeches are not written, they're rewritten. But he believes they need to be written out. If you want your speech to be good, you need to write it out. And it'll be easier to use these tools if we do that. And using these tools will become easier, less effort as we practice with them. We'll see the opportunities to use them more readily. So with that, I'm going to end our panel on humor for the non-humorous speaker. Carol, I'm glad you could stay with us. Leisuk, I'm glad you could stay with us. I am going to hand control directly to our general evaluator to evaluate the session. And when she's done, because our president is left, I will close out the meeting. So our general evaluator is Karen McNamara. Take it away, Karen.
Thank you, Kyle. What a fun evening. I appreciated so much about this evening. First, I would say it was evident because you brought it up in the past that you were using a book and you sent the link to the book in advance so people could have an idea what you were talking about. Then you did the work on picking several speeches for the workshop and you had people prepare utilizing the book. Lots of preparation went into it and that was very evident. And I appreciate that. We started on time, we had guests, we had people, everyone participating. There was the educational portion, then the workshop portion, and then comments and feedback. So everyone got to speak. And that I think is very powerful. And I would say that we could take it a step further, and you may already be planning this, Kyle, but I was thinking that at this point, it would be really good to challenge each of us to take one or two of our speeches and really work on that opening to make it funny. Because as we all know, the opening and the closing of our speech are probably the most important part because it's what you start off to get their attention and it's what you leave them with to take away. So if we start working on adding humor to those, and like you were explaining, Kyle, having humor with in the very first sentence, it's really powerful because after someone laughs, then they are ready to listen to whatever you say next. So it's one of the most powerful times to really capture and bring your meaning to the table. So if you weren't planning on that, that would be a recommendation that I would have because I really want to do that. I want to take some of my speeches and really work them because when I have taken a speech and worked it like we've been doing in this club, I can't believe the difference. I do a speech and I think, oh, that was good. I kind of knocked it out of the park. And then I get feedback and more feedback. And I think, oh, I didn't even think of that. I should try that. I could, oh, that's a good idea. And then you all of a sudden completely transform your speech into something that is so much richer, so much funnier, so much more appropriate for your audience. And I think that's in particular very true with contest speeches. But any speech, really, I think that's important. So I thank you for all the work and for having both pieces. I think our four presenters did a great job, especially some not having as much time for prep and being willing to step up out of their comfort zone. I mean, really, that's what it's all about. We're able to step up and try things. And I mean, that's why we're here. So kudos to those who stepped up out of their comfort zone, and some of you even last minute. That's awesome. And thanks, Kyle, for pushing that. I think that's good too. And I'm a fan also of the workshop and having breakout sessions. I think that that's a great way to get everyone to participate and to take it to the next level. And I do agree with the comments of maybe making the breakout a little bit longer because we were just getting our juices flowing and really getting going on it when we were like, oh, we've got 2 minutes left. So we elected to kind of stop and just refine it and practice it once beforehand. So I think that would be good. I really think the content is good, and I have not purchased the book, but I'm going to now because I think that it will be a good thing to go back to when I'm trying to add humor in. And I will add one other personal comment related to the writing a speech out. I, like you, Kyle, was not a fan at all of writing my speeches out. I taught a lot, all kinds of groups, and I would always work from an outline with my key points so I could just come back to my key points. But what I have learned over time in working with the world champion of public speaking is that if you're doing a keynote, you're doing something really important that's not a teaching workshop so much, but an actual speech or presentation, having it word for word written out is important because when I worked with Darren LaCroix and he at his humor workshop, he took his humor speech that he won with, where he falls on the ground, the ouch speech. If you haven't heard it, it's a good one to look up. But he took it piece by piece and talked about the humor and how often they laughed and why they laughed. And he said, if I didn't have it written out, I would never get the right words. Because one time you tell it and but then the next time, did I say that word or you don't know. And when you have 5 to 7 minutes, every single word counts. And that's what I learned from that session too. So I think it is good practice when you're doing a very specific speech to do that. So I am thrilled with the way the meeting went, with everything that we did, and the format and the background work, and appreciate everyone playing. And at this point, we'll turn it over to Joel to give us the timer report.
Thanks, Karen. I'll just give the panelists report now. So Phil spoke for 10 minutes, 58 seconds. Emmy was about 15 minutes, 40 seconds mark. Cheryl was at the 7 minutes, 47 seconds. And Cynthia was at the 8-minute mark. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
And then I turn it back to Kyle.
Sure. Now, I am not the VPE. Mary is, and Mary is not here. So I cannot assign you homework, but I do think that Karen has the right idea. I would suggest that each of us choose a speech, and that this is to members. Choose a speech you worked on last year, pull it out, look at it, especially the opening and the close, and see if you can apply any of these tools to adding a line of humor right away at the opening and also at the close. If it's an inspirational speech, you do not want to take away the power of the inspiration, but if you can do it with humor too, more power to you. Now, for our guests, one of the things we do, we have practice meetings, and next month is one of them, and I'll tell you about next month's meeting in a minute. But in a practice meeting, we will make room for 3 or 4 members to practice speeches, and we encourage them to bring back a speech they've already done. And then we give them three evaluations. One evaluation is on humor, one evaluation is on storytelling, one evaluation is on content and effectiveness. And it's built right into the way this club works. You can do a speech over and over and over again to make it better and better. Too often in our Toastmaster clubs, you give a speech once and you never touch it again, and you don't learn the art of crafting a speech. And while we're teaching humor techniques and storytelling techniques, one of the disciplines we are teaching is crafting. We don't talk about that much. So let's talk about next month. Next month is October, and for, at least here in the US and in Canada and in some countries, one of the holidays in October is Thanksgiving, which tends to focus on scary stuff. We are not doing a ghost storytelling night like we did 2 years ago, but we are focusing on the art and craft of creating tension, stress, and fear in your talks. So Mary has decided to name this meeting Channel Your Inner Stephen King. Now, we have 3 opportunities for people to speak, to practice a speech, 5 to 7 minutes. And you can go out, the agenda is out on the web, on the Free Toast Toast website. You can go out and grab one of those slots now. We also have a teaching slot that's available. And Mary sent an email to 3 of our members asking if one of them was willing to take the teaching slot and talk about how do you insert fear, anxiety into a speech. How do you pass that emotion into the audience? So anyway, I'm not going to preempt those 3 people who are looking at whether or not they can do that, and but that's going to be next month's meeting. Now, I do not have a link for registering for that, but guests, if you would like to receive an invitation to sign up, just put your name in the chat and I will make sure that I send it to you. And of course, people who are members of Squim Toastmasters Club will hear about it anyway. Carol, this is the first time you visited, I think, our Laugh Lab Storymasters. What was your experience tonight?
I really enjoyed tonight's meeting as it has opened doors for me to understand how I should craft my humorous speech. I've taken this engaging humor path, and I'm still struggling with writing stories.
Yes.
Short stories. Out of the 10, I did only one story. So now it's something that opened my eyes, and I'm going to get that book, the handbook that's going to help me. And I will work on it. Thank you so much.
I'm glad it's been helpful and useful, and I agree with you that the engaging humor. I'm working on the engaging humor path too, my second time through. And the first time I looked at it, I went, "Well, this is great. They're asking us to do humor speeches, but Toastmasters not teaching us how to be funny." And my first response was, "Why aren't they doing that?" But then my second response was, "Thank God they're not doing that, because Toastmasters is not an organization that has a reputation for being funny." So they leave it to us to figure it out. And this club is one of the few clubs I've seen that's trying to figure it out. Lei Suk, you have visited us several times. What was your experience tonight?
Like Carol mentioned, this meeting makes me open eyes toward humor. So it was very helpful, and it encourages me to try humor in my speeches. Many thanks.
You're most welcome. Does anybody have any other comments for the good of the order? Phil.
Yes, Mr. Panel Moderator,
Yes.
I would like to point out that you successfully used the twist in your discussion of next month's meeting, because you moved Thanksgiving into October and you made Thanksgiving a scary holiday. Well done.
Did I say Thanksgiving, not Halloween?
Yes.
Well, I didn't realize. I obviously planned that.
Kyle, what was the name of the book again that you used?
The non-humorous handbook. And the link is still in the chat. So if you save the chat, you'll be able to go back and get it. Phil, that is really blurry. There it is. The Non-Humorous Handbook by Brian Wolf.
Do you have Kindle, Karen?
Do I have what?
Do you have Kindle?
No.
Okay, because that's what I have Kindle, and so they have a Kindle version, so I was able to take it, the Kindle, and it was only a couple dollars. But yeah.
Yeah, I bought the Kindle version for like $3.
There's a hardback or a paperback, right?
Yep. Yes, there is. That's what Phil was holding up.
Oh, that's right.
And by the way, this book teaches 4 techniques. Emmy and I have been looking at a couple of others that, like, one book has like 25 different techniques. That we thought that was a little overkill for a first time teaching. But what we might do is we might start taking one technique and introducing it every month or 2.
That would be a good idea.
Yeah, so we can have more tools in the toolbox. Any other comments for the good of the order? If not, it has been a pleasure moderating this panel and participating with Laugh Lab tonight, and I hope our guests will come back next month, and have a nice night.